Chapter 54. It was Sunday morning, and Mickey had invited Karen from work to stay the night with her and little Jace, while Jason was out of town on business. He was due home Sunday evening, so in the meantime, Mickey decided to go shopping in Modesto. She was planning on buying something special to wear for her husband that evening. Since it was spring break, Mickey had arranged for Jace to spend the night at a friend's house, so she and her husband could have the house to themselves. Mickey had risen from bed earlier, and while Karen slept in the guest bedroom, she cleaned up the kitchen and got the coffee going before starting the bacon frying. The smell of bacon was often better than an alarm for Jace. Sure enough, he appeared at the kitchen table, bleary-eyed and not much of a conversationalist. Two smiling faces looked back at Mickey, and a very grateful Karen accepted a hot cup of coffee, while Jace sipped his orange juice. Said Karen while savoring her coffee, I used to hate this stuff. I would tell people coffee was cruel and unusual punishment, and coffee ice cream was a terrible use for perfectly good vanilla ice cream. Laughing, Mickey responded, Boy, that sure doesn't fit the Karen I know. Well, the Karen you know had to start getting up in the morning and going to work, she replied, with a slight chuckle in her voice. It was a matter of economics, really. Either I start drinking cups of ambition so I would be able to function well enough in the morning to get to work, or start looking into multi-level cardboard box homes. Mickey suddenly had a mental image of Karen living out of a cardboard box and started laughing so hard she had to put down the spatula she was holding. Jace didn't quite understand the joke, but he sat quietly until the laughing died down, then said, I don't like coffee. I think it tastes like farts. This, of course, opened up a whole new round of laughing, and since Jace understood the subject matter of this particular joke, he was laughing right with them. Oh, boy, said Mickey, wiping the tears from her eyes. I don't think I've laughed that hard in years. I'm just glad I'm not wearing mascara yet. There was a knock at the door. Mickey went to put down her spatula once again, but Karen said, Stay. I'll go see who it is. Thanks, love. I'm not sure how I look after the Karen and Jace comedy show. As she disappeared around the corner, heading to the front door, Karen said, Oh, just you wait. I'm just getting started. Mickey chuckled a little and continued frying the bacon on the griddle. Enjoying the light rock coming from the radio playing in the background, she heard a noise behind her and said, Who was it, Karen? Mickey, was all she heard. She turned around and looked at Karen. Instead of the light and smiling face of her friend, the face looking back at her was stricken and filled with worry. This instantly concerned Mickey. Who was it? Mickey, you're needed at the door, was all Karen could say. In the following days, there were those who asked what happened next. Quite honestly, Mickey couldn't answer. She had no recollection of the events of that day other than knowing she was told Jason was dead. Mickey was thankful for Karen being there because she's not sure she could have been responsible enough to care for herself, let alone Jace. According to Karen, Mickey went to the door and met two men who were officers of the Navy. Actually, one was an officer and the other was a chaplain. After learning they were talking to Jason's wife, they explained he had been working on a very classified project for the government. While working on the project, an explosion happened and Jason was caught in it. Explaining that his death must have been instantaneous, they regretted to inform her there wasn't even a body they could return to her. When they told her the bulk of the message, Mickey slumped to the ground. Jace instantly ran to her side calling, Mommy! And crying himself. Stepping through the door, the two men went to either side of Mickey and helped her to her feet, then guided her to the dark gray couch near the front door. Karen moved the pillows so Mickey could sit, then remained glued to her side, helping prop her up as much as possible. The tears streaked down Mickey's face so much she could barely see. Karen told Jace to get some napkins. Then, realizing he was equally disabled at the loss of his father, she asked the chaplain to get some from the table. "Do you want me to shut off the stove?" asked the chaplain when he neared the kitchen. "Yes, please," replied Karen. Mickey didn't even hear the question. All she could hear was what sounded like rushing water in her ears. The one thing Mickey managed to ask through the sobs was, "How could this have happened?" "Mrs. Marsalis," said the officer, "I'm sure you know the projects your husband worked on were top secret. He was working on things even I haven't been told about, since they are way above my pay grade. All I can tell you is what I've been told. The project he was working on went catastrophically wrong, and it exploded when he was right next to it. I was also told his efforts saved the lives of a lot of people before he perished." There was a pause when the officer said, "Ma'am?" Mickey, who had been staring at the floor, slowly looked up at the officer. "Ma'am, your husband is a hero. There is no greater sacrifice a man can make than to give his life to save others. I stand in respect of a hero of our country." Mickey didn't have any words. Being willing to sacrifice his life to save his fellow man was definitely the kind of thing Jason would do. But what was she going to do now? Jason was her life. He wasn't just her other half, he was her everything. Even on the few occasions when she was cross with him, he still occupied a place in her heart no other man, no other person occupied. Half of every heartbeat in her chest beat because of him. Every move she made, every breath she took, every plan she made for the future was based on living the rest of her life with her soulmate. It was always understood that she would spend the rest of her life with this man. The officer felt helpless as he sat in front of Mickey and Jace. Karen wasn't spared from the tears either, knowing her close friend was in exquisite anguish. She did her best to prop up her friend, but felt so impotent in her efforts. She was trying to think of anything she could say to help Mickey feel better, but she had nothing. There wasn't anything that could be said. After a few moments of silence, the officer spoke up again. "Ma'am, there's something I've been asked to give you." Reaching into a satchel he had been carrying, the officer produced an 8-inch by 5-inch flat case, bearing the presidential seal. "I've been asked by none other than President Michelson to give this to you. It is the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I'm not sure of the circumstances surrounding it, but I can only assume the president wanted to award this to Jason for the bravery he showed in saving so many lives." Then turning to little Jace, who was sitting there like a fawn in the headlights, the officer said, "Your father is a hero, son, and this medal is something awarded to him by the president himself. Few people get this medal, so you should be incredibly proud of him and what he's done." Mickey held out her shaking hands, softly grasped the case, and took it from the officer. Placing it in her lap, she opened it and gazed at the blue ribbon suspending the medal. The white star with 13 stars on a blue center background was impressive, but it did nothing for her. 5 minutes ago she had a husband, in her mind at least, and now he was gone. There wasn't even a body to bury. The man who came with the officer spoke up, saying, "Ma'am, you have the deepest sympathy of the President of the United States. I am told he was a splendid man, and had outstanding character, and certainly the circumstances surrounding his passing speak to that. May I ask if you have someone who can help you from a spiritual standpoint, Mrs. Marsalis? Not looking up, Mickey replied, Yes. Yes, I do, thank you. Good, said the chaplain. Glancing over to the officer, the chaplain stood, causing the officer to stand as well. After Mickey stood as well, the officer said, Mrs. Marsalis, what I said earlier about there being no greater sacrifice than to give your life in the saving of others, I meant that. Straightening his back, the officer snapped his best salute, saying, Please allow me to salute the wife and son of one of our country's bravest men. Standing there, he maintained his salute until Mickey said, Thank you, officer. Before they left, the chaplain handed Karen a packet of standard information for the proper handling of arrangements. Not that any mortuary arrangements would be needed in this case. It was a sealed envelope and was far too much for Mickey to deal with at the moment. As the two men left and were walking away, the officer said how much he hated this duty, but at the same time he understood the honor to himself in honoring the families of the respected dead of this country. The chaplain agreed on both counts. Mickey clutched the box with the medal to her chest and seemed to aimlessly wander away from the door. As she walked, Karen continued standing nearby in case she was needed. Eventually, Mickey found herself at Jason's desk in his office, and, sitting in his chair, she once again broke down and cried. Jace was crying again, too. Karen sat on the couch in Jason's office, holding the little boy who had just lost his dad. As she sat there, Mickey thanked God that Karen was there. She didn't know what she would have done if she were alone. After a long time, with no words and only tears, Mickey slowly released her hold of the metal case and looked at the seal on the front of it. She contemplated how this medal was basically all she had left of her husband now. She looked around at his desk and at the things Jason placed there only days before. The last thing was a small statue of a Greek goddess called Niobe, which, although he couldn't say why, had meaning concerning the work he had been doing. There were a lot of characters in another language around the base. Mickey thought to herself it was probably Greek. Looking again at the case with the medal, she propped it against the statue. For now, this was to be a memorial, a shrine to the best husband a woman could ever have. He was the one and only love of her life, and she knew there would be no other. A heartbroken Mickey went to bed and cried herself to sleep. Karen moved in with her that day. Although Mickey continued to live each day, going through the motions, inside, she was dead. Beginning that day, Mickey kept a hand towel near the bed as crying herself to sleep became a nightly ritual. Hey, fellow Galimarians, this is Dan Adrian, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to my book. If you can, please click like down below because it really helps me bring these videos to you and lets me know what you like. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and click on the bell so that you'll get notified when I release more chapters. If you have any questions about this or any other of my books, or if you want to know more about what it takes to write a novel like this one, please make sure you leave your question in the comments below. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.